So, I think now everyone can sleep nice and peacefully. Don't you think? Hearing Toshio-san say this, Marie and myself quickly exchanged glances and nodded. Yeah, he's right. We don't have to worry about anything anymore. At least, I guess so. But still, I kind of felt a strange sense of unease. I wondered what it was. Returning to the lounge, the key that Toshio-san had taken to the wine cellar was handed back to Kobayashi-san. After everyone wakes up in the morning, make sure you open it. Huh? Oh, sure. Kobayashi-san sounded a little bit tired. It seemed like Toshio-san was the owner in this exchange. Kobayashi-san's reply kind of seemed a little bit unsure. Both of you go to sleep as well. I don't think there's anything more we can do right now. We just have to hope that the weather is better tomorrow. I guess so. I guess that's right. Alright, Kyoko. Let's go back to our room. Kyoko-san's shoulders started shuddering, and she started crying again. Rubbing her shoulders, Kobayashi-san stood up. All that was left was me and Mari, Toshio-san, Mikimoto-san, and then Kayama-san's wife, Haruko-san. Do you really think my husband is the killer? There was a small voice coming from the couch. I was flustered. If she had said that her husband wasn't the killer, I would have been able to understand her, but she said, "Is my husband the killer?" Which seems strange for me, given that they're a couple. That's just what I deduced from the situation. What do you mean, such an unconfident reply like that? He's definitely the killer, isn't he? Toshio-san seemed really angry, and I got a bit confused. But do you really think that's the kind of attitude that a killer would have? Mikimoto-san said, posing an interesting question. It's strange acting all relieved when you don't have any evidence or anything, Toshio-san said. But if the police arrive, do you think they'll be able to find a whole lot of evidence through... Oh, what do they call that? Forensic evidence. Won't a lot of evidence come through forensics? Maybe the killer is confident that they didn't leave any evidence. In any case, I don't think the killer could be anyone else other than Kayama-san. I'm going back to my room. Toshio-san then left down to the back of the corridor. The rest of us, including Kayama-san's wife, Haruko-san, fell into a deep silence. Just then, Haruko-san opened her mouth to speak. You know, I'm not his first wife. I looked at Mari's face, not really knowing how to respond, but she seemed just as confused as I was. My husband, he's too nice. He's really nice to the kids, and he's really nice to me as well. But having said that, at his work, people say that he's kind of the boss from hell, and he's just a good for nothing. But I can't really say anything about his work, so I'm not really sure what the actual situation is. I think I only really know just one side of him. But even if Kayama-san did something bad, or maybe even if someone has any reason to despise him or hold a grudge or anything, there's no way he'd actually kill someone, don't you think? I said, seemingly trying to cover for Kayama-san. But I guess, in a way, if it seems like you're about to be killed, I guess sometimes you need to kill that other person, said Mikimoto-san. I agreed with him and kept silent. Maybe this Tanaka person held some sort of grudge towards Kayama-san and chased him all the way here. Trying desperately, Mari started speaking in an overly bright voice. In any case, why don't you get some rest, Haruko-san? No matter how much you try to think about the situation, we don't really know anything. She was right. Perhaps Haruko-san thought the same thing. She smiled weakly, stood up, and then started to walk around. She then climbed the stairs, headed up to the second floor. Feeling a little worried, we watched her go upstairs, and then Mikimoto-san spoke. Alright, well, I guess I'll head back as well. What are you going to do? Well, I guess we intended to return at some point. But my room and Mari's room were separate, so we'd have to be separated. That made me a little uneasy. Okay, so we're getting to a choice here. Choice A is... but I hesitated to ask her to spend the night together in one of our rooms. Choice B is... Mari, do you want to come to my room? I said with confidence. So we can invite Mari to our room to spend the night, or we can just kind of let it slide and hope that she'll be all right. Well, this is kind of one of those situations where, you know, you don't want to give them the wrong idea, but there is the question of safety. So, I don't know, I think I agree that people should stay together, because, people get murdered when they're off by themselves. So let's ask Mari to come to our room, I guess, and see what she says. All right. So that's choice B. Let's do it. Mari, do you want to come to my room tonight? I said, trying to build up the confidence. You wouldn't be thinking about anything weird at a time like this, would you? Don't be ridiculous. I just thought... I'm happy to go, but just don't do anything weird, all right? Of course. Of course not. Well, I guess that went okay. I was a little bit scared to turn the lights off, so we left the room lit and went up to the second floor. When we started climbing up the stairs, Mikimoto-san suddenly fell in our direction. Are you okay? Sorry, I'm just a little bit lightheaded, he said, but he still managed to make it all the way to his room. So Mikimoto-san he got hit on the head, and I think he said he had sleeping pills or something. There was some kind of I feel like he had medication to kind of help him rest or something like that. So he was kind of out of it for a while. Maybe he's acting though. I don't know. All right, be careful. Mikimoto-san, as he said as he entered his room. I wasn't sure what exactly to be careful of, but I feel like it was really the most appropriate thing to say at a point like this. I opened the door to my room and I let Mari in first. I sat her down on the bed and sat directly opposite her on the other bed. Can you stay awake with me until the morning? Sure. I was dead tired, but I was sure that I wasn't going to be able to sleep that well. Both of us fell silent. A night in a cottage, alone with Mari in a room. I feel like I'd been waiting for this moment for such a long time. But somehow... Okay, so... our choices here are to quietly reach out for her hand and hold on to it, or sit next to her on the bed and put our arms around her shoulders. I guess out of these two decisions, probably the least creepy to do in this environment where multiple murders are happening is to just reach out for her hand rather than start putting our arms around her. So let's do choice A. I quietly reached out my hand and gripped hers lightly. I wonder if Midori-san is really dead, Mari-san said suddenly. I didn't know what to say. What if, tomorrow morning we find out that it's just all some big act? Some kind of entertainment organized by this cottage. And so Midori-san's alive and she wakes up and she's all healthy. And do you think something like that could happen? I knew that Midori-san was dead, without a doubt. There was no way that wasn't true. But having said that, I tried imagining the kind of situation that Mari-san was talking about. That it was all some kind of act. It'd be so good if it really was. It really would. I'm scared. Me too. Why do people kill each other? Mari started to get a little bit philosophical, but at the same time it was an innocent question. Of course, I didn't know how to answer. I can't believe that a person like Kayama-san could have killed someone. Me too. I'm starting to think that it wasn't possible. I'm starting to think that he wasn't responsible for it. Really? So, what you're saying is, when you were trying to deduce who the criminal was before, maybe you were wrong? I wouldn't say that I was wrong. Maybe that I'm just missing out on something. Something that I'm missing. If I was wrong, and the killer was someone else, what was I supposed to do? What if someone else really is the killer, and a new victim appears? I started shaking. Toru, Mari-san whispered. What is it? Come and sit next to me. Quietly, I sat down next to her and put my arm around her shoulders. I could feel her shoulders shaking slightly under my touch. If no one else, I knew then that I had to protect Mari. I made that small and somewhat embarrassing pledge to myself. Touching ever so slightly, and in a somewhat relieved state, both Mari and myself, who were dead tired, somehow fell asleep. When I woke up, I had fallen asleep in her bed. Feeling a little dazed, I took a look around the room. I couldn't see where Mari was. Mari? I tried calling out her name, but there was no response. I looked at the watch on my wrist, and it said 3:50 a.m. I wondered if she was using a shower, but when I listened out for the sound of the water, all I could hear was the piercing howl of the wind outside the window. I stood up and went closer to the door. It was open. It was open only a little bit, but it definitely was open. I started to panic. Had someone unlocked the door and entered when I was fast asleep? And carried Mari out of the room while she was sleeping? No way. That's impossible. No one would be able to do anything like that without waking either of us up. And there's no need to do something like that. I was sure that Mari had some sort of reason, some independent reason for leaving the room. For example, going to get something outside the room. Or going back to her own room. Maybe she went back to her room to use the shower. Yeah. Maybe she was just looking out for me. She didn't want to wake me up. In any case, she was alone. I felt a black feeling of unease rise up from the center of my heart. In any case, I had to make sure that she was okay. I have to go and get her. The corridor was dead silent. Perhaps everyone was sleeping. The lights were still on. Somehow, I managed to sneak all the way back to Mari's room and stood in front of her door. Mari? I knocked on the door and tried calling her name. There was no response. I put my ears on the door and tried to hear if there were any sounds coming from inside. All I could hear was the sound of the wind. If she was using the shower, the bathroom was right near the door. If she was using the shower, I should be able to hear something. I turned the knob. The door was open, almost anticlimactically. Mari, are you there? Just as I called out her name, I heard a scream from downstairs. When you hear a scream of that quality, just hearing it sends shivers down your spine. That was the scream that I heard just now. Mari had befallen some terrible fate, and she needed help. I knew that's what was going on, but somehow I couldn't make my legs move. As if, upon hearing a scream such as that, I couldn't bear to face what was waiting for me. That's how I felt in that instant. I heard her scream once more. Compared with the scream from earlier, it seemed weaker. Like, rather than fear, it seemed to be coated with sadness. The corridor, the second floor corridor, was totally silent, as if everyone had disappeared. I half hoped that someone would come bursting out into the corridor, having heard the scream, but there was nothing. What do I do? So we can either run to where Mari is, or knock on all the doors and ask for help. Both of those seem like a good idea. I guess we'd just better run to where Mari is. Yeah, let's just do that. So, choice number A. I decided to run to where Mari was as soon as possible. I built up the courage to run downstairs. Did these stairs used to make this much sound? I was surprised at how much they creaked as I fled down the stairs. No one was in the lounge. I went out into the lobby, and when I looked into the drying room, I felt like my heart would stop. The door to the cellar was open. My heart started beating furiously. Mari? My voice was so dry, it didn't even sound like my own voice. Did Kayama-san escape from the basement cellar? How? Or maybe someone had unlocked the door and went inside. Why would they do such a thing? It was then that I heard loud footsteps from behind me. I was so shocked I thought I'd fly into the air. When I turned around, there was Mari. She'd run in my direction and stopped suddenly, so she'd fallen over. Toru! Her voice was a mixture of shock and relief. Mari! What on earth happened? She didn't answer me and instead flew into my arms. I held onto her shaking shoulders as tight as I could. What happened? That scream before, was that you? My uncle and my aunt, they're... Just hearing that, I knew what could have happened, but I couldn't accept it. Had someone attacked Kobayashi and his wife? There was no way that could have happened. How could people, totally sinless people, be killed one by one? You can't mean that Kobayashi-san and his wife are... I asked Mari, and I felt her nod in the cavity of my chest. Who would... I turned around to look at the cellar. Kayama-san. What happened to Kayama-san? Had he escaped from the basement cellar and attacked Kobayashi-san and his wife? Well, surely he did. Our choices here are... I decided to check whether Kayama-san was in the basement cellar or not. Or I decided to go and check on Kobayashi-san and his wife. Wow. Let's check on Kobayashi-san and his wife, I guess. Why was Mari there, though? That's what's weird. Unless Mari is the killer. In which case... She could have unlocked the basement cellar door, killed Kayama-san, and then killed the Kobayashis. That's really gruesome, but I mean, she could have done that maybe. Or the other way around, she could have killed Kobayashi-san and his wife, and then went down and unlocked the door and killed Kayama-san. But I don't know. Okay, alright, what are we going to do? Should we check on the Kobayashis, I guess? Let's do a quick save, what do you reckon? So just on the save screen, an interesting thing is the numbers. What it kind of tells you on the save file is that it says how many times you've saved it. So it's 4. I've saved it 4 times. And below that, there's a number for how many endings. There's 2 numbers actually. One of them is like kind of a complete ending. So kind of an ending that's canon, I guess you'd say, or like. There's more than one canon ending, I think, but an ending that's accepted as the end of the story. Then there's another type of ending which is kind of written with a similar kanji, but in this context it means that it's just kind of, it's like a game over kind of vibe. Well, it's not kind of the best ending, but the story kind of ends there. So depending on how many kind of complete endings and how many game over endings you get, other routes appear in the story. So you can kind of choose, which direction the story goes in, depending on how many ends you've collected so far. So for example, like to get a certain type of story, you have to complete the game a certain amount of times, that kind of thing, which is pretty interesting. All right, let's go and check on the Kobayashis. Let's just do that. I decided to go and check on the Kobayashis as quickly as possible. I grabbed Mari's hand to lead her into the back of the room, but she shook her head and refused to come. I don't want to go back there, she said. I was sure she'd seen something truly terrifying, so I wasn't going to force her to go back. But I didn't want to leave her here by herself. You don't have to go inside the room, and I'll be with you this time. Mari eventually accepted, hearing that I felt confident in what I was doing. We took one of the mops that had fallen over in the lounge, and wielding it as a weapon, we moved into the back corridor. Maybe Kayama-san had escaped from the basement cellar and had killed the Kobayashis. Or maybe, as we proceeded down the corridor and around the stairs, there were 3 rooms. Mari suddenly stopped walking in front of the door at the end of the corridor. Are they in there? She nodded. Swallowing, I let go of her hand and began to walk into the room. The lights had been left on. There was a small kitchen and a room with tatami next to it that were lit brightly. It was a very normal dining room. Looking at it like this, I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Yikes. And there was Kobayashi-san. His back was up against the wall, and he was sitting on the floor with his legs out. There was a knife protruding from his stomach, and there was a pool of blood around where he sat. Both of his hands were gripped around the knife, as if he had tried to commit harakiri. Ugh. I felt bile rise up in my throat, and I put my hands around my mouth. I felt like I was going to vomit, so in a panic, I ran to the bathroom. When I opened the door to the bathroom, something fell on me. It was a hand covered in blood. I felt myself scream. Oh God. There was blood all over the bathroom. Kyoko-san was naked, and she was lying in the bathtub. Jesus. Her eyes were peering up at me like glass beads. It was in that moment that I realized she wasn't breathing. This is what Mari had screamed at when she saw it. This was members of Mari's family. Her uncle and her aunt. It wasn't just fear. She had suffered a huge shock. Thinking about how Mari must have felt in that instant, I felt a kind of sadness, bittersweetness, just unbearable feeling. Flustered, I left the room where Mari was standing. They're there, aren't they? She said. I guess she meant to check whether they were dead or not. I wanted to say no, but I averted my eyes. Huh? I felt like someone had just walked by outside in the corridor. What's up? I just thought I saw someone. I pointed and felt a shiver climb up my spine. Had the killer been watching us? Was it Kayama-san or was it someone else? I don't know anything right now. I gripped Mari's arm as hard as I could, so much it hurts. Mari gripped my arm, so much it hurts. Toru, I'm scared. It's okay. Just don't leave my side. My palms drenched with sweat. I gripped the mop and started to move gradually back to the lounge. I felt like I could hear someone breathing. My heartbeat started to pound. We made it to the front of the basement cellar. The door was open. Wait a sec. Who could have unlocked the door? Kayama-san? I peered down into the dark stairs and tried calling out. There was no response. I started walking down the steps, one step at a time. My hand was gripped firmly onto Muddy's, right behind me. The only light in the wine cellar was a single light bulb. Ah, Kayama-san. Underneath that dim light, Kayama-san was collapsed on the ground. His face was facing Muddy, and his eyes were wide open. Around his head, a pool of blood with a diameter of about 1 meter was seeping. Kayama-san's been killed as well. I felt like I lost the ability to even think straight. There was a dismembered body, an unknown assailant. Mari-san was beaten to death, and now the Kobayashis and Kayama-san. This wasn't a detective story anymore. There were no puzzles to solve. Now it was a game of survival until the next morning. If we didn't think about how to survive, both Marty and I would be killed. We had to move. We had to act based on that train of thought. I don't want to do this anymore, Mani-san said, suddenly crouching down, turning her face away from Kayama-san's dead body, and crying. Marty, you have to get a hold of yourself. If we don't, we'll be killed. I grabbed Marty by the shoulders and shook her. A faint light started to find its way back into Marty's eyes. Okay, let's just go back up, shall we? I had no idea what to do anymore, but there was no way we could be in the same room as a dead body. Looking at our surroundings carefully, we climbed up the stairs. I thought that we had better let the other guests know that there'd been another incident. The first person I thought we should notify was Haruko-san, Kayama-san's wife. Gripping onto Marty's hand, we returned to the second floor and started knocking on everyone's doors. Wake up! Wake up, it's an emergency! Please, wake up! The first people to open the doors were the 3 office ladies. With dazed eyes, Kanako, one of the 3 ladies, stared at Mari and myself. It didn't seem like she'd changed her clothes, so I guess she'd been awake the whole time. Has something happened again? I nodded carefully. And then Kayama-san's wife opened her door and walked out into the corridor. Haruko-san, your husband, I didn't know what to say. Mari started crying again and turned to face the other direction. Seeing this state of affairs, I guessed that she understood what had happened. As if she was about to faint, she suddenly stumbled and put her hand on the wall. Flustered, I tried running to her, but she put up her hand and stopped me. I'm okay. Where's my husband? He's in the basement. But I think we should be together. I don't think you should go alone. I thought maybe she'd faint when she heard that her husband had died, but maybe she was tougher than she looked. That old man was killed? I heard Kaneko say from behind the door. Not just him, the owner and his wife as well. 3 people? I heard the other 2 girls suddenly gasp from behind. Now that this has happened, I really think that everyone should stay together. Could you let us in? Or at least Kayama-san's wife. Just let her in the room. Kaneko seemed to quietly discuss the matter with the other girls in the room. But eventually, she faced us again and nodded. Haruko-san, whose expression seemed to be that of a doll's, in that there's no expression, quietly made her way into the office lady's room. There was only one person left on the second floor, Mikimoto-san. Why hadn't he come out yet? Had he killed everyone? I'm just going to check on Mikimoto-san. I said to Kaneko, and then I stood in front of Mikimoto-san's room. I tried knocking on the door as hard as I could. Mikimoto-san! Mikimoto-san! Are you in there? There was no reply. I put my hand on the doorknob and slowly started to turn. I was surprised to find that it wasn't locked, and it opened easily. Had he gone somewhere? It seemed not. It looked like he was lying down in his bed. I wonder what kind of man it took to be sleeping this deeply in a situation like this. Maybe he thought he wouldn't be killed, or maybe it was him that... I walked closer to the bed and shouted right into his ears. Mikimoto-san, wake up! Mikimoto-san! but he didn't move, not an inch. Don't tell me. Muddy was lost for words. Is he dead? I started to think maybe that was the case. But there's no way. I'm sure he's just really tired, that's all. I tried shaking his body gently from the top of the sheets. Mikimoto-san! Mikimoto-san! It was as stiff as a tree trunk. Should you check his pulse? Don't be stupid. Why would he be dead? He hasn't suffered any kind of injury or anything. I tried gripping onto one of the arms that was peeking out of the top of the sheets. It was as cold as ice. And without thinking, I suddenly took my arm back. It's really cold. Had Mikimoto-san been killed as well? Flustered, I tried gripping his wrist once more and properly checked his pulse. He's dead, isn't he? Mani-san said, with tears on her face. Silently, I nodded. There was no pulse, not at all. We stood for a while. We couldn't think about anything. Mikimoto-san was the only person I felt like I could rely on if there was some kind of confrontation with the culprit. To think that Mikimoto-san had been killed as well. No, hang on a second. Was he really killed? You know, Mikimoto-san might not have been killed, I said, looking at Muddy's shocked face. What do you mean? Mikimoto-san, someone hit his head really hard. Someone or something. So maybe that caused some kind of internal hemorrhaging, something like that. Given time, the blood inside your head starts to congeal and exerts an incredible amount of pressure on your brain. If you leave it alone, you can die. So, it's death by natural causes? Well, if he was hit in the first place, I guess that means he was murdered, but if there's no visible wounds on the outside of his body, there's nothing else you can consider. In any case, the fact was that Mikimoto-san was dead. But it seemed like he had died from an injury rather than being killed by a serial killer or something like that. Suddenly, Mari covered her mouth with her hands in shock. Toru, hey! What is it? Mikimoto-san died here. Kayama-san, my uncle and his wife, they're dead too. So that means that the person that killed all of those people it has to be Toshio-san. It took me a while, but finally I realized that. So I guess that means that Toshio-san really was the killer. So that means that his outpouring of grief at Midori-san's death and him making a big fuss about wanting to kill Kayama-san, that was all an act? Right, let's go back. Jeez. The plot thickens. Gripping onto Mari's hands, we flew out of Mikimoto-san's room. Entering entering the room of the three office ladies, we turned around to lock the door. The three women were all huddled in the corner as if to protect themselves. But it seemed like they didn't feel like chasing us out of the room. The only people left alive are us, except for Toshio-san. Upon saying so, it felt a little bit false. Had everyone really died? Weren't we just making a mistake somewhere? Maybe we'd misseen something. It felt like it wasn't reality. It was like some kind of movie or a drama we'd suddenly found ourselves in. Did Toshio-san kill the owner? Did Toshio-san kill my husband? Haruko-san said, standing expressionless. That's the only plausible thing. In any case, there's no one else that seems like they'd be capable of something like that. And it seemed like Toshio-san was going to kill Kayama-san anyway. As I was speaking, I realized something odd. Toshio-san might have been trying to destroy an enemy of his. Mari-san said, lifting her face up. An enemy? What, like an enemy of Midori-san's? So, who could have done such an awful thing to the Kobayashis? Well, it'd be Toshio-san, wouldn't it? Why would he have to do something as awful as that? But he gave the key to the basement cellar to Kobayashi-san, didn't he? The key. That's it. If you don't have the key, you can't unlock that door. So, in order to kill Kayama-san, did Toshio-san kill the Kobayashis as well? He's mad. He's absolutely mad. But if you consider it that way, then it makes sense. Kayama-san killed Tanaka-san and Midori-san. And then Toshio-san killed the Kobayashis, took the key, opened the basement cellar door, and killed Kayama-san. If that was correct, doesn't that mean that there's no danger for us anymore? Unless Toshio-san was intent on just indiscriminately killing whoever he could get his hands on, there was no reason to kill me or Mari or the three women. Or Haruko-san for that matter. But wouldn't it be better to think that he had already gone mad if he'd already killed innocent people such as the Kobayashis and Kobayashi. I remembered that gruesome crime scene and felt the bile rising up again in my throat. What should we do now? Mari asked in a quiet voice. We just have to sweat it out until morning. What happens when morning comes? Well, the weather will get a bit better and we might be able to get through on the phones. Someone will come to get us. They might come to get us. And that's what I hoped. That's what I tried to make myself think. But what if the weather doesn't change? And what if the phones don't work either? I'm sure the weather will get better at some point. And when it does, all we have to do is just climb down the mountain. But I knew it wasn't that easy. Even if the snowstorm died down, we still had to get rid of all the snow on the path. We couldn't get the car out of the car park just by ourselves either. No, I'm sure the car was buried under meters of snow. We wouldn't even be able to find it. There was a painful atmosphere of silence that descended upon the room, as if everybody else was thinking the same thing. It was because we'd suffered a shock and a feeling of fear that no one is used to in everyday life. Death through the hands of violence. There was nowhere to run. This heavy feeling started to weigh down on everyone in this small room, shut up in this small room as the sound of the wind blew outside. Maybe even I'll be killed illogically, like that. I struggled to breathe through that fear. Maybe I'll be killed like Kayama-san, like Kobayashi-san, or even like Tanaka-san. It was without a doubt that staying locked up in this room was the safest thing to do. But Toshio-san was walking around freely outside. Maybe he was keeping an eye on us from outside. He was looking for a chance to come and attack us. I felt like I was starting to lose my mind thinking about such things. I felt like escaping somewhere was safer. I started to wonder how many moments of silence had passed. It felt like hours had passed, and so I looked at the clock, but it was still before 5 a.m. Haruko-san was leaning on the windowsill. She wiped the glass with her hand and looked outside. It's so dark I can't see, but it seems like it's the same outside. The three women were huddled together with their shoulders pressed and their eyes closed. They might have been half asleep. Marty's face looked awful as well. It was a mess from crying. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her hair was frazzled. I'm sure my face looked the same. The person that looked the most normal was Haruko-san, even though she'd lost her husband. They say that even at the saddest of times, you can't cry. But for her, it was hard to tell whether she was sad or not in the first place. Wait a sec. I started to get a sudden suspicion. I supposed that Kayama-san was the person that killed Tanaka-san and Midori-san. But if Kayama-san was able to kill Tanaka-san and Midori-san, that means that Haruko-san, who was in the same room as him, also could have. Maybe they were accomplices. If that was the case, maybe Haruko-san made it look like Toshio-san had killed Kayama-san. That would make Toshio-san look like the killer for all of the murders. And make it look like he was getting revenge on Kayama-san for being the murderer of Tanaka-san and Midori-san. That's what I found myself thinking. I struggled to suppress the fear that welled up from within me. It's okay. I'm okay. There's nothing to worry about. Even if that was the case, as long as I'm careful around Haruko-san, I won't be murdered by her. And if my deduction is correct, she doesn't need to commit any more crimes. If she does, that'll make all her efforts to make Kayama-san and Toshi-san look like killers go to waste. I just don't know anymore. I don't know what's happening. I don't know who the murderer is. I don't know if it's dangerous or not. I'm not sure what to do now. Just these awful, nightmarish scenes keep appearing in front of me one after the other. I'm not even sure what's real and what's not anymore. It was at that time that we heard a strange sound. It was a ping-pong sort of sound, like a doorbell. What was that just now? Mari-san asked uneasily, but there was no way I knew. What? It sounded like a doorbell. But there was no way there'd be a doorbell. There was no way that someone had come to this inn in the mountains right before morning. There was no way they possibly could have. We heard the doorbell once more as it rang throughout the inn. Once more. And another time. We all looked at each other. Oh my god! Keiko suddenly screamed out and dove into the bed. That's some kind of Lord's Prayer, I think she's saying. Shaking, I heard her saying a prayer. The sound of the doorbell. We heard the sound of the doorbell once more. Oh my god, who could be at the door? That's nuts. It sounds like my doorbell. That's the creepy thing. Oh my god. If my doorbell rings now, I'm gonna have a heart attack. Kanako suddenly stood up. Someone's come to help. She ran to the door and tried to open it. Okay, so we can make a decision between... There's no way someone's come to help. This is a trap. Or, thank goodness someone's here to help. I mean, I want to see who's at the door. But I get the feeling that we might find out either way. Maybe this is a bit of a superfluous decision. So let's just go with A. And just, we'll turn down Kanako. There's no way someone would come to help us. This is a trap. Wait a second. There's no way someone would be here. I reached out for her in a panic. But it's ringing. The doorbell. Look. She was right. The doorbell was ringing. Our Father, who art in heaven. I heard Keiko. Keiko's voice of prayer rose in volume, as if she thought there was a ghost at the door. God, this is creepy, this doorbell. Oh. Seeing Keiko making that prayer with her hair in a fuzz just made this atmosphere of uncertainty worse. Getting annoyed, I said to Kanako-chan, It might be Toshio-san ringing the doorbell. Why would he do something like that? I don't know. I was confused. I wasn't sure what I was saying. Maybe he was just trying to scare us. Or maybe the wind's so strong that it's blowing something against the doorbell and it's ringing it. Is something like that possible? All I could do was just say what I thought was going on. I don't believe something like that would happen. What if it's someone that's come to help? What if they just end up going home? Kanako slapped my hand away with an unusual amount of force. I don't want to stay here. I don't want to stay all locked up here. I didn't have any time to stop her as she flew out of the room. I wasn't sure whether to chase after her or stay to protect everyone here. So we can choose between chasing after Kanako or staying here to keep watch. Yikes. Surely... Wait, so if Kanako is out of the room and we leave the room, that means there's Mari, two of the office women, Keiko and the other one, and Haruko-san. So there's like four women left in the room. If Haruko-san is the culprit, she might kill those three people. Maybe? But I don't know how she... That doesn't seem possible. Or if Toshio-san is the culprit, maybe there is a possibility that he'll come into the room and massacre everyone. But how would you do that? I mean, if we choose to go with Kanako, and then when we return to the room everyone's dead, then I guess we know that it's Toshio-san, right? Or if everyone except for Haruko-san is dead, then we know it's Haruko-san. Either way, I guess we'll know something. So let's just go with A. We'll go with Kanako. There was no way I could let Kanako go by herself. Mari, I'm going after Kanako. Don't leave this room under any circumstances until I come back. I grabbed the mop and flew out into the corridor. I couldn't see Kanako-chan's. I couldn't see Kanako-chan at all. I tried listening out for the doorbell, but I couldn't hear it anymore. I ran to the stairs and almost seemed to jump down them. Kanako was standing in the lobby, right in front of the door. Oh. Looking at the lobby, the glass of the door was broken, and someone's hand was reaching for the doorknob. Yikes. It seemed like they were trying to unlock the door. I tried to get a careful look, and as I drew closer, I gripped onto the mop and moved towards the lobby. The entrance, I should say. wind and snow was blowing in from outside through the broken glass door. Oh my god. Poking in from outside the door was a hand covered in blood. I tried prodding it with the mop. There was no response. I didn't know who it was, but it seemed like there was one more dead body on our hands. I found myself thinking as if it was some kind of situation removed from reality, that I wasn't connected with it anymore. I reached for the doorknob and unlocked the door and opened it. The strong wind blew the snow so hard that it made it almost impossible to see anything outside. The corpse that had been resting on the door slowly collapsed onto the ground. Its eyes were open, and on its face was snow and blood. Those eyes were without a doubt Toshio-san's eyes. Toshio-san? I whispered, but the sound of my voice was distinguished by the sound of the wind. Extinguished, I should say. Why would Toshio-san be here? I didn't understand. The wind and the snow picked up, and in a panic, I closed the door and went back inside. Kanako-chan was seated on the floor, crying her eyes out. Someone help. It wasn't possible for her to have killed Toshio-san in the time it took for me to chase after her. So who was it that killed Toshio-san? I didn't know. But it seemed as if whoever that was, they had attacked Toshio-san from outside. Which meant that, in actual fact, someone we didn't know was the culprit. Someone that was freely entering and leaving the cottage and killing us off one by one. This devil-like figure seeking victims from the middle of the snowstorm, keeping as quiet as possible. Everybody just keeps dying. I felt a shiver right its way up my spine. Kanako-chan whispered, looking vacantly around the room. Everyone's dying. Everyone's dying. There's no help. I wanted to deny what she was saying somehow, but I couldn't. Is everyone going to die? Is this some kind of inescapable fate for all of us? Am I going to die? Is Mari going to die? I didn't know what to do. I started to think that there was no way we could face this devil of a person. There was nothing we could do. I felt like making a prayer. I didn't care which god I was praying to, whether it was Christ, whether it was the Islam god, some kind of Buddhist god, or a Hindu god. It didn't matter, as long as they could chase away this devil. Toru, what happened? Suddenly Mari's voice could be heard from the second floor, and I looked up. She came down the stairs. Mari, I told you not to leave the room. It's dangerous. But you wouldn't come back. She walked over in our direction and embraced me. She didn't hesitate. She wasn't embarrassed. There was only a slight sense of peace that came at the end of fear and despair. Did something happen? Mari asked. And so I told her what had happened to Toshio-san outside. Toshio-san? But why? I don't know. He's covered in blood, so I think it happened outside. Someone did it to him. Someone? What do you mean someone? Who? There's no one else here. She almost screamed. Maybe he tried escaping and was attacked by a bear or something. I said, and hoped that that was the case. A bear? Can a bear do that much damage? I don't know. I didn't get a good look. Well, go and get a good look. It's important. I thought she was right, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. If it was obviously... If he had wounds that were obviously made by a human, I wasn't sure what to do. But it wouldn't do just to leave him be. Helpless, I made my way back to the entrance and went outside onto the freezing cold porch. There was nearly a whole centimeter of snow that had piled up on Toshio-san's face as he remained collapsed on the porch outside. Reaching out, I brushed off the snow from his face. There was blood-red snow that remained on his forehead. It seemed like he'd lost a lot of blood from his forehead. Feeling like I wanted to vomit, I started to brush off that red snow and found a terrible wound. His forehead and his hairline had been crushed. It looked like it had been hit several times by something hard. But I didn't know anything about murders or anything, so I didn't know any more than that. It doesn't seem like it was a bear, but something might have fallen onto his head from somewhere. It could have been someone, but it could have been something else as well. I ran back inside and explained the situation to Marty. I didn't want to accept the one most plausible possibility. It was then that we heard another scream. It was as sharp as a knife, overflowing with fear. Give me a break. I can't deal with this anymore. When will this nightmare end? I lost my willpower in my arms. I felt like I was just going to collapse right there. My hands and Marty's hands naturally found each other's. Everyone's dying. Everyone's dying. Kaneko-chan repeated the same words over and over again as she sat on the floor. I wanted to hit her or something to shut her up. As if I'm going to die. I ignored Kaneko-chan and went upstairs with Marty. Of course, I still gripped the mop in my right hand. Before I'd even reached the second floor, I knew that someone had collapsed in the corridor. It was Aki, or maybe it was Keiko, or maybe it was... It seemed like it was Haruko-san, Kayama-san's wife. Was she the one that made the scream before? I didn't have any kind of response to this new incident. I couldn't feel fear or despair anymore. I didn't know how to feel after all that had happened. I even forgot to be cautious and just drew closer to the body on the ground. Haruko-san? There was no reply. Mari-san gripped onto my hand so much it hurt. The blood. There was a small pool of blood that was flowing gently down from where Haruko-san lay on the ground, from around her head. I crouched down and shook her gently and checked her pulse, as I thought she was dead. Her eyes were wide open. It seemed as if she'd been shocked by something. The killer found their way inside again. Mari screamed, wearing an expression of fear. I was confused. How did this killer, who had just attacked Toshio-san outside, managed to come into this second floor room in such a short amount of time? There's no way they climbed up the stairs. And what about Aki and Keiko? It was just then that I found myself overcome with fear. The three women who showed fear at the suspicious letter they found returned to their rooms earlier than anyone else, and who seemed to be the most scared out of all of us. What if they were all accomplices? This realization hit me like a thunderbolt. If they were accomplices, they would have been able to do a range of things. They would have been able to dismember a body in a short amount of time. They each would have been able to support each other's alibi that they were in the same room together. Not to mention, they would have been able to kill Haruko-san when Mari had left the room. I realized the only people in this inn that were alive now, after Haruko-san, Toshio-san were killed, were me, Mari, and these three women. I felt a panic come over me. What if they were going to attack us? The three of them together. I felt a lot more scared imagining that than when I had thought that Toshio-san was the killer. I stood up and looked for a place to evacuate. There was only my room left. I grabbed Mari's arm and ran towards my room. My hands shaking. I couldn't unlock the door. What's wrong? Don't you want to look and check if the other girls are okay? Mari-san seemed like Mari-san thought it was strange what I was doing. But don't you understand yet? The only people left are me, you, and them. It took a while before the meaning behind that found its way into Mari's head. Wait, so you mean... But that's impossible. Those women are... It's ridiculous. She was at a loss for words. Wouldn't it be more plausible if it was someone that wasn't part of this group, that was entering and leaving without being noticed by anyone? Oh. It seems unbelievable that someone outside of the group would be entering and leaving the cottage without us realizing. That's ridiculous. Overcome with fear and confusion, I found myself yelling at Mari. But that's just... Look, I'm surprised too. But I can't think of anything else. I heard footsteps climbing up the stairs slowly. Was it Kanako-chan? I wasn't there anymore, so maybe she'd stopped acting and was going back to her room. Maybe they would discuss how to dispose of the only people left, me and Mari. I heard a scream, and then footsteps running, entering one of the rooms. I guess it was her. Mari and I stopped breathing and listened out. We couldn't hear anything. What do we do? Mari whispered. I shook my head, silent. I didn't know. Even if it seemed logical that they were just girls, and there was no need to be afraid. I just couldn't find myself feeling that way. It couldn't be helped, seeing all those dead bodies. I just couldn't believe that it was something a normal person would do. How could someone do something like that? Why would someone have to do something that awful? If it was one man who had gone mad with revenge, then I could understand. But these women, who could only be incredibly normal office ladies, do something like serial murders. What kind of reason would they have for doing such a thing? My complete lack of understanding and not being able to imagine this situation just made me more uneasy. But those three women, it wouldn't... That doesn't mean that they're all accomplices, does it? Mari-san said suddenly. What do you mean? I just can't believe it. Do you think that was really Kaneko-chan acting like that? What if it was just Kaneko-chan that didn't know anything? That's impossible. Those three were saying that they were there together the whole time. If they're accomplices, it has to be all three of them. But even as I said so, I found myself realizing that it was hard to imagine that their behavior would all be an act of some sort. I'm going to check, Mani-san said, and tried to leave. Wait, what are you going on about? If you leave now, it's dangerous. What, so you're okay with just us being saved? I'm sick of seeing people get killed. I can't just stand by as someone else gets killed. I felt the same. So that's why I wanted to do as much as possible at this point in time. But with Mari, I just didn't want her to go through something like that. Even if those three office ladies were innocent, I didn't want to submit Mari to all that danger just to save their lives. Just let me go. Mari pushed me aside and then tried to open the door. Okay, I get it. I'll go with you. No, wait, I'll go myself. And you have to promise me that you'll stay right here. It doesn't matter how late I am. Just don't leave here under any circumstances. I couldn't bear to just leave her alone while they were just walking around like before. Marty seemed to worry for a little while, but then she decided to go along with my plan. Okay, I promise. But come back soon, alright? And what? Be careful. Of course. Taking the mop in my hands once more, I slowly opened the door. There was no one in the corridor. That is, no one except for Haruko-san, who was still lying on the floor in a pool of blood. I slipped out. I nodded to Mari and then closed the door. All we could hear was the sound of the door locking. With quiet footsteps, I headed towards the girls' room. I felt a bit pitiful, feeling so scared of these girls. But all I could feel was my heart beating and my dry mouth. Coming to a stop outside the door, I listened carefully and put my ears on the door. I could hear someone sobbing from inside. Maybe Muddy was right. Maybe they didn't have anything to do with this. But if that was the case, then that means that there was someone like Jason running around this place like a crazed killer. I didn't know which was scarier. I gripped the doorknob and turned it. It wasn't locked. Maybe Kanako-chan, who was the last to enter, forgot to lock it as she flew in. I opened the door and peered inside. In that instant, I heard a strange scream. Kanako-chan, her hair a mess, had gripped a skating... What do you call that? A skating pole. Stock. Not a skating pole, ski pole. Kanako-chan had gripped a ski pole and was swinging it in my direction. I took one step back, but it hit my right shoulder. Ugh. The ski pole pierced my clothes and my skin. The sharp end of the ski pole was covered in blood. But it was this crazy woman's face that was the scariest. More than that weapon, more than my injury. Scared out of my wits, I flung the mop around into the darkness. I heard the sound of hitting, and the woman took a step back. But there was that strange scream again, and I saw the ski pole aiming for my face. I managed to escape by a hair's breadth. Kanako-chan, what? You killed everyone? I couldn't finish what I was saying. She came to attack me once more. I tried to move further back and I hit the wall. Without thinking, I held up my left hand and tried to stop the ski pole. I let out a scream, but it didn't make any sound. My hand felt like it was on fire. Blood started dripping onto the ground. I'm going to be killed. If this continues, I'm going to be killed. Gripping onto the end of the ski pole, I brought down the mop onto Kanako's forehead. Twice. 3 times. There was a strange sense of resistance in my hands. And every time I hit her with the mop, her face got more and more twisted. Wow. This is intense. I felt blood starting to drip down my forehead, like a strange kind of baptism. The girl slowly collapsed onto the ground. I saw her body convulse for about 10 seconds. It was when time seemed to stop that I knew that I killed someone. What have I done? But thinking about the other 2, I suddenly got my wits back. Why didn't they come to help us? Or if they had come, maybe I would have been killed. Making a detour around Kanako's body, I opened the door fully and entered the room. I somehow imagined the scene that came to greet me at that point. Aki and Keiko were both collapsed on the bed. There was blood seeping from their heads. Just like Haruko-san, it seemed like they'd been hit on the head. Did Kanako-chan kill everyone? As I considered that, I realized that it was impossible. The reason being that Kanako-chan went downstairs before I did. And she came back upstairs to the second floor after I did. There was no way she could have killed Haruko-san, or even the two women for that matter. And what Kanako-chan had used as a weapon was a ski pole. Even if you can pierce someone with it, you can't beat someone to death with it. Looking around, I didn't see anything else that could have been the murder weapon either. So who was it that killed Haruko-san? That mean that there actually was someone we didn't know hiding somewhere? If not, I felt a presence behind me and turned around. Rah! There was Muddy standing in the corridor with the ski ball covered in blood. Muddy. Murderer! An expression of pure evil crept up on her face as she prodded the ski ball in my direction. There was nothing I could do. It was just an altogether unbelievable action. My throat was on fire. I couldn't bear how hot it was. I felt my chest get wet. I pressed on my throat, and it was then that I realized that there was blood overflowing from it. I tried to remove the ski pole that had pierced my throat. It fell to the ground, covered in blood. Marty turned to leave, as if I was some kind of dirty thing. Marty. I tried calling her name, but there was just... I couldn't make any sound because of my throat. It was like the sound of drowning. You? You killed everyone? After I went downstairs, you killed Haruko-san, Aki, and Keiko? There's no way. When I heard Haruko-san scream, Mari was right beside me. It couldn't have been Mari. There's no way it could have been her. Say that it's not you, Mari. With an expression of fear and hate on her face, she turned to stare at me. I fell onto the ground. All I could see was red. It was red overflowing from my throat. The last thing I thought was what Mari would do, being the last person alive. She's the only one in a mountain of dead bodies. I felt sorry for her. The end.